As a lot of you already know, we're super excited to announce that Madam Gandhi here is going to be keynoting Period Action Day today. So a lot of you may know her as an artist, a drummer, but most importantly, as an activist fighting for gender equality and menstrual equity, just really around the world in general, really being outspoken about that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. And thank you all so much for taking the time to be present in such an important movement and message. And thank you to Period Movement for hosting this. It's so awesome. I've seen all the different chapters posting about today, so it's a pleasure to be a part of it. In my keynote today, I'm going to share a little bit about my story and about how my activism with regards to this topic really started, and then kind of where I think we're at in today's movement. Are we doing Q&A today?
We're happy to. We can,
No, it's about your schedule. I know you guys have a whole conference scheduled.
We're happy to do it if your schedule allows it. We can give.
Sure. Of course, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. This is so important. And I have my menstrual cup T-shirt on. It's actually really cute. So I remember being in my second year of business school in Boston, and that whole second year, right before graduation, I remember being really inspired by many of the runners who are on the Charles River. And so I really started up my own running practice. I liked how raw and powerful it was. I liked feeling connected to my own body. And anytime that I had my period when I was training, I would just take off a couple of days. Like, I wasn't interested really in running on day one and being uncomfortable. And in April of 2015, when I got to the London Marathon start line, I realized I was about to be on day one of my period. And I guess I hadn't thought about it. Like, I hadn't planned it, or I kind of just hoped that it would just come the day after the marathon, And so, like many of us who have been caught unprepared on our cycle, I started evaluating my options. And I remember thinking, a pad is not good for running. It causes chafing. I didn't have a menstrual cup on me at the time. The tampon, I mean, of course, that's usually the product that I was using the most. And I didn't have one. And I also was like, there's no privacy really on a marathon to change one out. I don't want to run with an extra one in my hand. I also didn't think it seemed comfortable. Like, I was like, I just didn't feel like it was appropriate for 4 or 5 hours of long distance running. And so I decided to just bleed freely and run. And I knew it was a radical choice. I never really heard of anybody doing that, but it was the choice that felt the most empowered for me in that moment. And I was like, running, bleeding anywhere for 26 miles is like punk rock, if you ask me. Like, I was just like into like the raw badassness of it. And so I was running and I was feeling good. And, the more I ran, the more I thought, wow, I'm actually in such a privileged position to be even able to make this choice for myself and my body in this moment. And that millions of women and girls and trans folks who bleed all around the world are not in that same position of privilege. And that stigma is one of the most effective forms of oppression, because it denies us the vocabulary to talk comfortably and confidently about our own bodies. And why does this matter? Because when we can't talk about our cycle, we have the enormous amounts, as this movement knows well, of injustice that happens to women and girls and folks who bleed. We know that in developing parts of the world, we see the dropout rate of girls from school around when girls hit puberty start to increase, because young people don't feel comfortable going to school without the products they need. And so therefore they're encouraged to just stay home and take care of themselves, but then they fall behind. And especially at that time, I remember knowing a little bit about this issue, but I remember just critically thinking about it on my own. Like, regardless of whatever the statistics are, I just kind of had this moment of awareness where I was like, we as women and as girls and as people who lead not only are doing incredible things every single day while on our cycle, but we're expected to actually hide it away in shame and pretend like it doesn't exist, instead of celebrating the fact that we out here running marathons, running meetings, changing the world, taking care of our families, going to school, doing incredible things during this challenging time for us each month. and that that's not okay, and that we should all be able to celebrate how powerful we are, and that we should get rid of the narrative that we are in, that we have to hide away and pretend like this part of our body doesn't exist. And so when I crossed that finish line, I started to write about this experience. I started to write about these thoughts that I just shared with you now. I started to write about how we as women are expected to prioritize the comfort of other people at our own expense. We're expected to pretend like we don't have hair under our armpits, or that we don't bleed each month, or that we don't have sexual needs and desires. And all of that is a fallacy. All of that is part of the movement for gender liberation that I know so many of us on this call are aligned in. And when I wrote this blog post, the story went viral. And it went viral because a friend of mine saw me post it to my own friends and family on my Facebook at the time. I had written it on a website called medium.com, which is just kind of like an open source site for anyone to write their ideas. And when the story went viral, my friend had posted it to a news site called policymike.com. And then Australia picked it up, and New Zealand picked it up, and parts of Africa picked it up. And of course, India, where my parents are from, picked it up, in London. And so then the story gained a lot of notoriety. But as I've just told you, that wasn't my intention. My intention was really just to show up for myself and my body in that moment, and have this moment of power for myself. And of course, the story was viral because it was polarizing. It was polarizing because it was like, ew, that's so gross, and oh my God, that's so amazing. So it was this really intense conversation that was happening globally. And in the negative camp, there was basically two schools of thought. The first one, which was what I just shared, that's so gross, which was perfect, because that was the entire purpose of running in an empowered way. It's like, we are running to combat that stigma. We're running and we're writing this article to challenge the fact that something so natural and so normal and so healthy is quieted and shamed. And so if you think that's gross, then that's where the work has to be done. And it's perfect that you're saying that, because now there's a whole wave of people counteracting that. And then the second critique was, that's so unhygienic. And for me, that criticism really was more just like a masked misogyny. But if I were to address it at face value, I mean, I don't have any bloodborne illness. I didn't come in contact with anybody during my race, and my blood certainly didn't. I washed, we just did laundry at the end of the marathon. Like, it was a very clean process. And my movement and my message was not one about free bleeding.
Jesus.
It was a symbolic act to kind of combat the stigma that we all face around the world. So can someone mute? It's kind of loud wherever you guys are. Thank you. I was gonna say, for me, when that story went viral, it really sparked this kind of like global conversation about how we treat menstruation in various cultures. And there was kind of this underlying movement bubbling. And many people have been in this space for decades and decades and decades, because if you're in that space, you know how critically important it is that we destigmatize menstruation for personal liberation. But it was really these viral moments. It was Rupi Kaur's Instagram, post that went viral. It was this running story. It was Megyn Kelly and Donald Trump during the 2016 debates getting into it, and Donald Trump insulting Megyn Kelly and saying, oh, she must be on her period. She must have blood coming from her wherever. And then women and folks who bleed tweeting up a storm and saying, periods are not an insult. So this 2015 moment, and coming to kind of the end of the talk, I'm going to spend another couple of minutes just showing you where I think we are in the landscape, and then I'll open it up to Q&A. But that moment really showed me how I kind of see this movement in a set of frameworks. I see the radical activists, and you can apply this framework to where we're at now with BLM and getting ready for voting season for those folks who are watching who are here in the United States. You really need that first wave of radical activism. Sometimes we really do need to shock people into questioning society's most problematic norms. We do need marching. We do need to create like revolution around something. We do need the artists. We do need the painters, the free thinkers, the creatives, the radicals, because that that thing that seems crazy is the thing that gets the media to then start telling the story. And so that was kind of what I saw. I would see the radical activism, and then you would get the media to tell the story and get citizens and the general public aware of this issue. Like, most folks don't know something is an issue until it's covered in a big way in the media. That then goes and affects the legal, because when you have a more educated constituency, they're now pushing their own politicians to say, we don't want the tampon tax, or we want to have healthy and free and safe access to period products in public high schools, for example. It's pushing folks to think more critically about gender identity when it comes to what our bodies do, and really including the trans and gender nonconforming community in this conversation in an empowered and meaningful way. And then also that affects, again, legislation when it comes to bathrooms and personal privacy, and putting non-gendered bathrooms so that all people feel safe and all people have access to the products they need, regardless of how they want to identify. And then finally, that fourth component, so we have the radical activism, the media coverage, getting folks to create change through the government systems and through politics and through more formal procedures. The last component really was then seeing how, as a result of what was happening in Washington, was innovation. We do live in this capitalist paradigm, for better or for worse, where instantly when people notice there's like a problem that needs a solution, like the whole market blows up. So between 2015 and now, I've seen this area of people creating more menstrual cups, 3D printing menstrual cups, which is so cool. I was at a school called the Green School in Bali, and the students were doing a project where they were 3D printing menstrual cups out of recycled but safe plastics. Organic cotton tampons, watching people really identify the fact that we're putting these toxic chemicals into the most sensitive part of our bodies. And what we really need is to be using much safer products if we are going to use something like a tampon or a pad. Innovation around the apps, really tracking our own cycles and our own flows, and learning how it affects our mood, learning how it affects our body, our skin, our partnerships, our sex drive, the way we show up at work. These are conversations that we shouldn't be hiding away in shame. We should be empowered by them. I'm at a place in my life where I'm able to safely tell my team, I'm in that 1 week before my period and I get moody, and I want you to know that I'm actively working on it, but it's also something that's difficult for me to control. And so if you can be a little more sensitive to me, and also if you can not take what I say too personally, we can all get through it. And that transparency has actually brought my team closer, because they're there for me when I feel sensitive or vulnerable during a couple of days out of the month. So that's where we are now. I'm seeing always the activism. I'm seeing always the media coverage. I really am. I'm seeing the politicians and our Congress people pushing for change. And then I'm seeing women and queer folks and folks of color and folks of different, often minority identities, stepping up to invent the products that they need. Folks in the disabled community developing products that allow them to safely and easily take care of themselves on their cycle. And it's radical. It's amazing. So, and then in terms of me and in my work, I would say it's always in the lyrics. I use my lyrics and my spoken word as my main source of my activism, to this day, and obviously showing up in protest. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Madam Gandhi, and we can open it up for some questions.
Thank you so much for that. That was it's really important perspective that you're bringing to us. So on that note, actually, so the first question we got is, how do you still experience sexism and gender non-inclusivity as an artist and as an activist?
I love that question. I mean, I think for me, I see a lot of the sexism. The part that I get most sensitive to is actually the fact that we don't really question normalized misogyny that shows up in lyrics and in music videos. I watch a lot of music videos and listen to a lot of my favorite songs in every genre: EDM, pop, country, trap, hip hop, all of it. There is so much subtle and overt misogyny, and we all keep dancing to it. We all keep working out to it. We all don't question the fact that a lot of us are being expected to turn up to the sound of our own oppression. So I think that's really where my work has been recently. I was accepted to be a TED Fellow as part of the TED Talks program for this year. And I used my talk and my opportunity to really shed light on this issue. In the same way, we are out here trying to eat organic and eat clean and take care of ourselves. Why is it that we're not bringing the same mentality to the kinds of music that we consume? So that's really where I'm seeing right now the misogyny show up. Thank you for asking that.
Another question. First, they say, so inspired by you, by the way. And the question is, what are you currently working on in the realm of menstrual equity and advocacy? And what are you working on? Yeah, what are you currently working on in the realm of menstrual equity advocacy?
I love that question. I think for me, it comes in a couple different ways. One is I travel a lot to speak. Obviously, it's a little bit different now in the quarantine, but it's been an enormous 5 years of using my time to tell this story and to inspire people to want to take change and want to prioritize this issue in their day-to-day. So it's speaking at corporations, it's speaking on college campuses. That's the primary way that I enjoy showing up as an activist, is using my voice. It's a lot of times why I say, own your voice, don't be afraid. Because I really do believe that that's been my contribution, because I've learned how powerful it is when we say what it is that we think, even if it's different from what other people think. The second way is that 10% of all of the merch that I sell at different shows, we donate to Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood is obviously not directly related to period health specifically, but largely they're related to our overall health as women and as gender nonconforming people. So that's another big partnership that we have had ongoing for the past 3 years. Showing up in special places like this, what you all are doing is so inspiring to me. And then I think using my platform to educate others about companies that are coming up that are making clean and safe products. A lot of folks don't realize that there are alternatives to using Tampax and the generic pads that are available at the store, and that there's affordable options to safely take care of your body. So those are some of the different ways that I continue to show up for this movement. And then writing lyrics into my songs.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And we have another question. How do you, as an artist, find yourself and your activism received by those who are in positions of power and are more important to resist your message and your voice? So what do you do to really get your work out there and push it out there, and being in such a position of power right now, and having such
That's a really interesting question. I think you got to be sure. First and foremost, you got to be sure. And I feel sure that we shouldn't live in a world where women and girls have to awkwardly hide away in shame when we talk about our cycle. I want to live in a world where anyone can identify with whatever gender they authentically are and be able to bleed and be able to talk about their own anatomy in a way that doesn't make them feel embarrassed or scared or small. I genuinely believe that we should be able to each have dignity and safety when we take care of ourselves each month on our cycle. I genuinely believe that I wish there was more information about how our menstrual health is and should be. And so once you are sure that what you're saying is the truth, it's easy to show up in front of anybody, because I'm not thinking of it as me versus them. I'm thinking about it as like a contribution to moving us all forward. I genuinely believe that this is the truth. I genuinely believe that this information would make the world better. So it's easy for me to show up and say these things, regardless of what other people think.
Awesome. So we'll just take a couple last questions for you. So how do you specifically stay positive and motivated when seeing all this around you and through all the work that you do?
I think it's a mixture. I think it's like a mixture of the self and then the community. The self is I have a daily meditation practice that I really do enjoy and take seriously, and I never miss a day. I make sure that I do 90 minutes of fitness, any kind of fitness, every day. Today I was able to run 8 miles. That was a pleasure. Yesterday I was boxing. The day before I was biking. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just movement. It makes me feel good. And then the community level, I really love connecting with other folks who are doing this work, because when we come together, we're like, oh yeah, I'm not crazy. Like, we're in this, we're winning, we're right. And it's not about right versus wrong. Like I said earlier, it's just about the truth. It's like, I believe that this is the truth that will make other people better. And I know it's the truth because it's not coming at the expense of anybody else. Like, us advancing this movement doesn't cause harm to somebody else. The only person it causes harm to is like the construction of male privilege. But I would like to believe that men would love to know how to be able to understand the anatomy of somebody else's body, in the same way that I, as a female identifying person, would love to more understand the anatomy of somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't be this thing that we're grossed out. It should actually be this beautiful thing of like, oh my God, your body does that. I had no idea. That's so cool. How do you feel? How can I help you? How can I show up for you? Like, that's magical. So yeah, that's the answer. Yes, Emma.
No, that's great. That's great. So just last two questions here. So how do you think other menstruators working in entertainment can better support this important movement within their work? I feel like
I
it's talked about enough by those who impact younger generations.
love that. I think there's two levers that I think a lot about. Like, one is the be the change style. I get like, there's like a be the change, and then there's like an activism side. So like, being the change means like, the artist is not like going to conferences like this, and they're not like at the front lines of the march, and they're not, a branded advocate. They're just embodying the change. And I think that embodiment might look like they're on their stage and they're casually like, oh yeah, you know what, like, I just got my cycle and I'm a little bit slow today, like, thank you all for being such an amazing audience. So they're organically weaving it into their day-to-day life, and in doing so are smashing the stigma and normalizing what it is that our bodies do, and incorporating it and modeling the behavior of the world that we're trying to drive towards. So we really need that. At the same time, we do also need the folks who have decided, this is an issue that I care about. I'm going to learn the statistics. I'm going to learn the different organizations that are doing something about it. I'm going to learn how to motivate my audience to care, and then show up for these organizations who are on the front lines of change. And we can't expect artists to like be activists, but I think you're absolutely right. We can expect artists, because they're cool and already loved, to be brave enough to smash the stigma in their everyday life. So those are the two different ways that I would love to see artists use their platform for good.
Sure. And when it comes to a very conservative society, how would you suggest someone approach this topic without offending certain groups of people? And do you have one call to action to youth activists within the movement now?
I love that. For the youth activists, own your voice. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. There's power in what you say, in what you say. I really believe that. That story wasn't supposed to go viral, and it did, because I was just showing up for myself and my body, and I felt so proud. And so I had to write about it, because I just thought it was badass to run bleeding. And it opened up this whole can of worms that many people wanted to talk about. And I find that with so many other things. I find that when I talk about pleasure, when I talk about partnership, when I talk about achievement, when I talk about being on the hamster wheel of achievement, like, whatever it is that you're going through, other people are going through it, like, without a doubt. So go first, say it first, be open about it first, because you'll be surprised at how many folks would connect with you on what you're saying. And then the first part of that question was really interesting. Can you just repeat it one more time? Because I had an answer that I wanted to share.
Yeah, so whenever it comes to a very conservative society, how
Right.
would you suggest someone approach this topic without offending certain groups of people?
So that question is such a great question, because I even remember my own Irish grandmother. Like, people think that it's my Indian family who would have an issue with my run. It was my Irish grandmother, who's very Catholic and conservative. And it is a dance, because of course I'm so close with my grandmother, and she was so uncomfortable and like so put off. And I remember when she messaged me, she's like, okay, now you can stop posting about it on Facebook. Like, you've had, the story has happened, move on. And I was like, wow. So in that way, you're right. It is offensive, but we have to remove that underlying assumption that us talking about what's happening to our own anatomy causes discomfort to somebody else's ears. No, it's wrong. And we have to be the change to inspire the older generations. Now, we must do so with absolute love, calmness, compassion, kindness, logic, self-power. We're not here to tell older generations how to think or feel. It's never going to work. But we are here to embody the future so that they see something they never even knew was possible, and that we actually get to inspire those generations to be a more honest and open version of themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So powerful, honestly, and inspiring every time we see you. You know, you were here for last year for National Period Day, and you're here now for Period Action Day. So we really appreciate your time. We appreciate all the amazing work that you're doing in the fight for gender equality and menstrual equity. And thank you so much for everything. Thanks for giving us your time.
Thank you. It's so special to see you all on here, and thank you for your leadership. It's such a pleasure to like have a multi-faceted group of people leading this movement. It means so much. And for the folks who have any other questions, my social is obvious. It's Madam Gandhi on Instagram and all of that. And I check everything. So let's keep the conversation going.
All right. Well, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Mwah. Bye.
Yeah, it was
Bye.
great having
Love.
you. Yeah.
You too. You all. Bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And for this will be up on the website, and we'll have it up on there soon, hopefully. So if you guys wanted to rewatch it, you can feel free to go up on the website, and we'll have it there. And everything else that we had today live, all the live events, we're going to be posting on our website as well. And please do check out the pre-recorded interviews and panels that we hosted leading up to Period Action Day as well. They're super interesting and very inspiring. We had some great people on there and a lot of leaders within the movement. So we appreciate everyone joining us today. Thank you so much. Please reach out if you have any questions. It was a pleasure being here with you guys. So thanks a lot.